Welcome to the potential future of professional StarCraft 2, with the very first tournament finals and the new proposed balance patch. And our first finalist, the former world champion Terran in the red, it's Micro Jackson, ByuN, facing off against Cyril's greatest stunt double, the rank 1 Zerg in Korea in the blue. We have Solar in a best of 5 Terran versus Zerg finals to the newest Pegasaur Cup tournament. And before we get started, it'd be incredible. You could smash that like button or maybe even subscribe. And we kind of the algorithm. And Jimmy, what are we at? 1,855 likes on this video, on this cast. And I'll cast another one. And I'll probably do it anyways, because I don't know what else I'd do with my life. But thank you for watching. Hopefully, you've had a good day so far. And hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better, as these two conversationalists have plenty of time to lay it all on the line, and more importantly in the chat, as with an 8-worker start among a whole slew of other changes. Jimmy, put them on the screen, please. I know. Among a whole slew of other changes, gives you maybe a little bit more time to build up. And I went through the effort of having Jimmy translate, because I noticed there was a lot of commentary throughout this game, and I believe throughout the series. But they're first commenting on the first Reaper coming out very quickly. ByuN is convinced that the Reaper comes out at a normal time and he has to make big sacrifices. Solar says, I'd already be losing Lings to Clem, which I believe is both trash talk and lamenting the Reaper in general. So, some other relevant changes that are already more than likely going to affect the game. The Overlord is slow, Overlord. It is about a little bit over 20% slower. We're not sure if that's entirely intentional or if it was kind of a misconverted number. But the result is that the Overlord is so slow, it is incredibly unlikely to get there by the time you've already decided on your build. So, of course, that lends itself to more diverse opportunities for those who would try to avoid it. Meanwhile, for Zerg, the Infestor now has an auto attack if you get close enough to use it, which is identical to the High Templar water balloon. The minerals and gas on each base are slightly increased overall. Not by too much, but by another minute or two of sitting around and mining, which it's unclear who that could potentially favor. I'm sure you can draw your own conclusions. And arguably most importantly, the Ghost. The Ghost has been changed dramatically. It has 25 less HP. It's back down to 100. It now costs 3 supply, which is 50% more. Though it does do a lot more damage. It has a baseline attack that does 20 damage. Instead of 10 plus 10 versus light, it has 7 range, up from 6. And its snipe ability cannot be interrupted, and now does 170 damage as opposed to 130 with a bonus against things like queens. So now Terrans may call that a nerf to the Ghost. Call it what you like. It is certainly a different sort of unit, and so different and so nerfed that ByuN is building a Ghost Academy at the 3.5 minute mark. Yeah, I had an idea of where this was going. The simple fact that it has more range and more flat damage makes it better against effectively every single other unit that isn't light. It's not as good, or it's relatively worse against things that it already was kind of good against. Where, like Lings, and Banelings are not light units. Fun fact, they just don't have much HP. I think a lot of people get that confused, but they just... So the Ghosts themselves can do more damage against Banelings, but they are light units themselves, which means the Banelings do bonus damage to them. Unfortunately, only one of them has a gun. So I think the solution to this is give Banelings guns. Can I get a hell yeah, brother, in the comment? Anyways. But to start things off, it's a Ghost Rush. 2 Marines are pushing away at Overlord, which isn't too far away. And the Queens will protect it for now. The Queens, relatively the same. The Ghost has not been spotted. It's working its way up. And one Queen already targeted. Another one, the Snipe! And it leaves the queen with 1 HP. It does 170 damage. Queens have 175 HP. So a nice tap on the shoulder, even an SCV might be able to do it. Overlord finally makes it into the main base, but more ghosts are on the way across. The first snipe knocking out a huge percentage of the monarchy. Solar relying on Zerglings. He has 42 drones against just 34 SCVs, which, if he's actually able to counterattack, and it looks like he might be able to cut off the reinforcements. But the Ghost, he does not have Cloak, but doesn't want to risk with the Hellions to back them up. Of course, covering the backs of the Ghost. And Solar, a little confused. So I want to make sure I get this one right. I'm going to retranslate it. And I know the translations aren't perfect, but I'm interpreting a bit. And I watched Solar stream. Ah, yes. Solar says, why is the Ghost so strong? ByuN says, Ghost weaker than expected. Which really sums up the sort of balanced conversations we have in StarCraft 2. But we'll see as time goes on, because I think there's a significant likelihood that these are not the end of Ghosts that we're going to be seeing. Yeah, sure, Blizzard may have canceled 2 versions of them, but ByuN is working up the tech tree now. He's got double engineering bay, a couple more barracks on the way. Still no starport, noticeably. But the snipes come out, just blast through, but the Queen transfuses. He gets a wraparound. The Ghost trying to slip away. The Hellions surrounded. And, well, eventually, the Ghost will be ripped apart by the ankle biters. And without a medevac or enough Hellions to protect them, Solar has shown that quantity has a quality all its own. 40 Zerglings, 3 Queens, but Solar with mass Queen Zergling is able to deal with the Ghost Hellion attack. Now, I will say, I'm a bit disappointed, though not surprised, that ByuN just did the most bare bones of possible attacks. I've seen versions, if you haven't watched Thermal's video yet, but I've seen versions with Hellbats. I've seen versions with a medevac. Now, a lot of those versions are much more committed. They keep you from going further towards your upgrades or just your economy in general. Though ByuN is no slouch there, as he has a 3rd command center done, a 4th command center in production, double upgrades as well, but Solar will have an advantage on that front, which is kind of rare for Zerg, but a buff I neglected to mention, but is very relevant now. The Carapace upgrade across the board. The Carapace upgrade, which applies to all ground units, unfortunately not buildings, is 50/50 cheaper. Tier 1 is 150, is now 100 minerals and 100 gas, as opposed to 150/150. So it's a pretty big savings across the board, and significantly easier to get those upgrades, especially in the early mid-game, which we've entered into pretty solidly now. Solar, with a Hydralisk dead on the way. Neither side really pushing the envelope when it comes to unit compositions, besides ByuN doing one of the most lackadaisical Ghost rushes. But Solar with just the Zerglings, unable to counterattack in a meaningful way. So, I need to talk about this, but it's not the time. The quick, come back, Brenda! Get off Apple Maps! It's so convenient. It doesn't work. Sorry, I blacked out for a second. So there is a new button, a load nearby units button, that every dropship can use. So instead of having to select all of the Marines and right-click onto your medevac in order to pick up quickly, you can now press a single button to, I'm calling it slurping, because before it just looked like players like Clem and ByuN were slurping up the Marines, but it was actually quite a technical process. But right now, putting the vac in medevac, I guess you could say, as ByuN slurps them up with that single button. And technically it works for Dropper Lords and Warp Prisms as well. But I will say there is one race that usually has a tendency to focus on pinpoint dropship micro, and usually has enough units to make it a meaningful change. Okay, I won't bury the lead here. It's Terran. It's Terran, obviously. Warp Prisms can find a lot of use. Dropper Lords, to be honest, whenever you send a Dropper Lord out, it's usually a one-way trip. There are a few scenarios where you're trying to maneuver your Dropper Lord in such a way that you're not juggling your lurkers in and out of your medevac. Sorry, Freudian slip. Your Overlord. But the Spore Crawler's in position. Solar's at 98 drones. So, and he has about... let's be clear here. Solar has the vast majority of his side of the map, and he's clearly extending towards ByuN's. ByuN has 88 SCVs himself. A full 4 base economy and counting. He's still, but Solar's at 100 drones. So he's going for the full 300 supply Zerg. I don't know what happened to these rocks here. He clearly didn't finish them off, but I highly recommend, especially if you're Terran, you try out that new load units button on the public test realm. It's immediately useful. The fact that ByuN has implemented it in less than a week, and ByuN has barely implemented change in his gameplay in the last decade, should tell you how useful it is. It's just clearly better in about 95% of scenarios. But is it good enough to stop the Zerg? As there is nearly 100 supply of Hydraslings and Banes bearing down. A big counterattack is lined up. The siege tanks on the high ground. Oh yeah, Vipers can now abduct siege tanks again. There and back again. So that is a big part of potentially dismantling entrenched positions, despite the relative and debatable strength of the Ghost. Though Fungal cannot interrupt Snipe. You can interrupt Snipe by killing the Ghost, but that's about it. Abduct also does. But damage no longer interrupts it. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but it seems relevant now. The siege tanks on the high ground. ByuN getting about as close as you can to a campaign player here, as he's got more CCs than a typical angry corporate email chain. And at some point, well, mules and scans and just the utility. That's how you invest your minerals in the later game. And ByuN going with the kind of Brood War-esque switch into Mass Factory, a much more bio-curious composition. He has 8 barracks, 3 factories, but only 1 starport. No fusion core yet either. Single Marine, but Solar has metastasized against the majority, across the majority of the map. There's a couple Zerglings burrowed underneath. And, well, this sort of Zerg style is all about hammering the Terran economy. You will not be cost-effective. The goal is to eventually be effective. So, if you deny him the 4th base and have like 5 or 6 more of your own, the Blinding Clouds to start, and on the back line will force him up the ramp, lunges forward, Baneling's rolling through, ByuN has the high ground, and oh no! Solar underestimated his power. Well, he tried to burrow a Hydra under there, but more orbital commands. It's Morbin time. He's going to have 8. The Ocho. Lands another command center. He has a few in reserve. There's a Nidus network on the way, as the direct assault on the front door strategy does seem to be met with diminishing returns for Solar. He's only lost 4,000 more resources. In fact, we're 13 minutes in, relatively few losses. Of course, we may have to recalibrate our expectations on the timing of the game, considering the 8-worker start. More command centers on the way. Lings. Ghosts. Well, a tactical Nidus at the front with the lurkers inside. He made the lurkers next to the Nidus and just shoved them in immediately. Those are Nidus lurkers, okay? Just walking across the map. Well, that's how you get shot by ghosts. That's how it works. Meanwhile, the Nidus, another Nidus in the back corner. The tanks, Blinding Cloud, and Solar. 3-3 is done. Oh, wait a second. Is this... Can't we kidnap the tank? What is this? Is the translation. And ByuN says, oh, I heard about a bug. I'm not going to bury the lead. I already know it's a bug. I wasn't sure if it was 100% in this game, but the Viper abduct against siege tanks doesn't work. And it's a real issue, and it's why Solar did not abduct those tanks, because even though the patch notes say it, it doesn't work. You still cannot abduct siege tanks. Which, well, let's hope we get that fixed soon. So it still seems, without abducting siege tanks, it's a good entrenched position. The EMP's across the board, but the Lings and Banes, the Hydras, able to rip through the front line, and ByuN losing a lot of ghosts, even though each one dying is so dramatic. And so on and so forth. That's just, I'm sorry, not trying to copyright infringe. The Lurkers pop out of the Nidus. The Queen, with creep spread now all across ByuN's property, or what he would like to claim is it, but Solar literally has, what, 10 hatcheries now? 9 hatcheries. 8 hatcheries and a Queen, if we're going to be pedantic. And that does seem like a pretty big issue. I don't know. In fact, a factory is finishing within the creep, which means he can't build any add-ons there until the creep... Oh, creep now recedes and spreads slightly slower. Not significantly so, but I consider it a bit of a buff, because it takes longer for the creep to recede after being taken out. And usually that's when you want to fight, or lure the Banelings in, and potentially take out some ghosts, as ByuN's units are spread incredibly thin. He comes up to the high ground, a few more Hydras are going to go down. But right now, Solar... That is not nearly as much of an income gap as I expected. But Solar has 6,400 minerals. 2,200 gas. He slices through another command center. A greater spire on the way. The only buildings he's lost, 3 Nidus Worms. Not a single hatchery. Not a single even piece of static defense. And 385 Zerglings, 75 Banelings, but only 16 Hydralisks and an Infestor so far. Another Nidus to the top right corner. He also has the bottom left. He's 3/4 of the way to that 4 corners bingo win. And Solar probably recalibrating now that apparently the Viper is still a little more impotent than expected. The Ghosts, on the other hand, seem to be firing on all cylinders, or at least one very large cylinder, which I'd show you another one, but your mother has the pictures. But meanwhile... The Zerglings over to the left side. Blinding Cloud on the Siege Tank and the Planetary. Though the Zerglings and Banelings are close enough that it can see it just fine from melee range. Meanwhile, the Lurker's trying to slice through, but the Siege Tank's outranging it. More Ghosts on the high ground. ByuN losing track of things for a moment. We'll lose some extra Ghosts. But there are plenty more where that came from. Well... Solar has now lost... Honestly, he's actually lost less gas. Despite everything, he's been very efficient about limiting the losses to Lings and Banes for the most part. Only 21 Hydras. A few Lurkers, a single Infestor and Viper. But the majority of the losses have been relatively... there's almost nothing more replaceable than Lings, Banes, and human workers. And right now, Solar only has 2 of those. Like and subscribe for career dread. Viper's Blinding Cloud, but ByuN, upon learning that those siege tanks would remain firmly entrenched, seems to have really upped the numbers. A lot of them get taken out, but those 2 tanks on the high ground. 47 kills, 26 kills. Just looking down on all the Zerg, and what did the Zerg have to say about it? Solar is continually hammering this base. Look at ByuN's money. Despite the fact he seems to just not die, ByuN is under 1,000 minerals and under 1,000 gas. Solar is mining from, well, we see a mule mounting carved out of the income gap there, but the main base, despite having those few 400 extra minerals, the natural, so every base has 400 more minerals and 500 more gas, split between the geysers and the mineral patches. Which means you can turtle a little bit longer, but that also means Solar has more money to work with as well, and he's mining from obviously more bases. So ByuN, his funds are running a little short, and look at that spread. I can't believe it's not butter. Probably crunchy peanut butter, but like 7, 8, 9 tanks. Most of them will be taken out. Another command center driven away. More Ghosts slaughtered. 27 SCVs dead over the last minute. And again, Solar will hammer on the base. And again, ByuN will hold technically. His tanks at 59 and 37 kills, respectively. Another wave. The ocean of Zerg trying to drown ByuN in a tide of Lings and Banes. He's adding in a lot more Hellbats. He has 3-2 upgrades for him. Which, and Hellbats, of course, only cost minerals. Marines have gone by the wayside a long while ago, though there's still a few mixed in there. Lings and Banes, the Viper looking for an opportunity. Some Zerglings make it into the former third base. The Mules drop on the Planetary Fortress. More Banelings rolling through. And Blinding Cloud on the tanks. The Hydras breaking in. But, oh. He took down the rocks to open up some space, but I think that fight just turned a corner. As Solar has now lost about the same amount of gas, but he's lost 10,000 more minerals. He's mined 12,000 more. But he lost a lot of Hydras. And ByuN maintained the majority. 60, 30, over almost 100 kills on those tanks. The Ghost starting to rack him up as well. He doesn't have that many Ghosts. Only 7. 13 siege tanks, but the Hydras, Lings, and Banes are coming in again. The creep is still a springboard, and Solar making great use of the Hydra lunge. He breaks the base, but ByuN is left with 115 army supply, which is something Solar literally can't reach with his current drone count. And for the first time in like 15 minutes, ByuN steps out of his quadrant of the map and is burninating his way across the countryside and gunning down everyone in his path. And Solar may have dug too deep and maybe too greedily. The Ghosts, despite their more fragile nature, I'm not just talking emotionally, seeming to survive the brawl. And he takes out not 1, not 2, but 3 hatcheries in the top right corner. And most importantly, secures... These are ByuN's only mineral patches. Besides these 3 over here, but he's about to run out. He's got 400 total minerals left. So Solar, he's building Corruptors. This is a very odd time for a potential Broodlord switch. Usually, well, at least historically, the Broodlords have been, unless you're Cyril, the Broodlords have been the choice when your opponent is so completely mined out they can't tech switch or reinforce anymore. The Viper! Ghost tries to line up a shot. I assume they have Cloak, but he hasn't used it much. So Infestors now get Microbial Shroud built in and can cast it from more range. It still costs 100 energy, which is usually the main sticking point on the use of Microbial Shroud. But we will see. Blinding Cloud on some Hellbats, which is of dubious value. And ByuN has taken is threatening the 12 o'clock base. The unit's lost as soon as Solar broke. Now he's going broke. He lost so much. The income gap is still incredibly high, but Solar's bank has nearly dried up. ByuN lands another command center. He has 11 orbital commands, which means the mules can drop. And he still has plenty of scans to scan literally. Okay. Ah, yes, another bug. You can upgrade Microbial Shroud. It does nothing, but the upgrade is still on the Infestation Pit, which unfortunately for Solar is another thing that might cost him some valuable resources. But he still has the bank. The Broodlords. The Broodlords are scanned, so ByuN knows they're coming. But Broodlords against Mass Siege Tank can turn the Siege Tanks against them. Now the Ghost, you can't interrupt the snipes, which... Well, he's trying to kite back. The Infestors do have energy, but Fungal trying to get close with the Banelings is... Solar is maxed out. Well, including the 30 or so supply of Zerglings he's building. ByuN! This is unbelievable. He's looking unbreakable. And I'm not understanding how we've gotten this far. It looked like he was the underdog. But now it looks like he's beyond reason. That might be another game, though. The Hydraslings and Banes from every side, but the Thors are looking mighty thick. And the Ghosts easily retreat back. They line up the shots. He didn't even have high-sec auto-tracking and building armor. He didn't even have the late-game turtle upgrades. And speaking of, the Broodlords will break through on the left side. They won't be joining the fight to the top right anytime soon. Thor is here. Infestor. I don't know if we got to see any of the slime balls it throws out. The thing is, the Infestor has an attack of 6 range. The Ghost has an attack of 7 range. EMP is 10 range. Siege tanks are further than that. So, it might save an Infestor. Microbial... That was kind of sad. I mean, I guess it helped. But the Ghosts are just popping everything. Target practice here. I feel like... Oh my, the Baneling... What? They're still Banelings! They get 14 SCVs, but that... It's still 111. 111 army supply against 82. It's still Banelings, Hydras, and Zerglings up against... Now, mass a Ghost, Thor, Hellbat. The cost of ByuN's army far outstrips that of Solar. And through all the fire and fury. Well, he's mining in the bottom left corner, but the Vikings and the... Well, did the tanks from the high ground eventually move out? Let's see if we can find them. There are too many. This tank has 61 kills, 38 kills. I think the tanks have probably near 1,000 kills at this point. 1,021 Zerglings, 229 Banelings dead. And I have to stress, that's how many Banelings died before attacking. When they attack, it does not count in the units lost, though the resources do make it there. Because of the quirk of the fact that when you attack, you succeed. You're not lost. But I can't help but feel the corner has been turned, as the income is not decisively in Solar's favor and hasn't been for a while. A single incredibly sad Broodlord. But ByuN is now mining from the upper right quadrant. He made do off of one base. 3 or 4 mining bases is not going to make it much more difficult. The Ghosts will retreat behind the front line. A Fungal is thrown out. One Ghost is mildly inconvenienced. The entire Zerg army is slightly more mildly inconvenienced, as the Ghosts, 16 of them, marching forward, almost untouched, besides that one that people are grossed out by. And, well, they'll line up their shots. Some lurkers. I feel like Solar's just pressing all the buttons now. He does have Cloak, but there is a Spore Crawl. Oh, well. Well, I can't help but feel like a key part of the patch is the Viper being able to abduct siege tanks. And the fact that that is not implemented after a week is a bit concerning. If you watch my patch video, you'll know that most of my criticism is wondering if we'll ever get any sort of fixes if things are broken. And I can't help... I didn't want to use the first game to have this platform, but that's a problem. I do think this game was somewhat decided by Solar assuming he had that ability, and rudely and painfully and very costly losing a fight decisively because he didn't. There was a clear moment when he obviously wanted to abduct the tanks, and he couldn't. So, now, this is not the biggest tournament in the world. These two have played in this tournament dozens of times. They've been in the finals probably at least a dozen. So, legitimately just limit testing things right now. But still. ByuN showing that despite the, and in his words, the weakness of the Ghost, they still find a place in the all stages of the game. But we'll see. Now, personally, I think that early game Ghosts can actually do even more damage. ByuN was running into the worst case scenario with the least preparation, and they still did okay. But just Hellions and Ghosts with no medevac definitely rely more on your opponent being unprepared. Solar does a 13-12. Now, I hope you appreciate, even the first game, we started from the very start, the 8 workers. Now, for those who've been watching a little more closely in the past, will know that pretty much every game except game number 1 of most series would be starting from the very beginning. It's just game 1. Usually people like to jump into the action, which was kind of the entire point of switching to 12 workers in Legacy of the Void, and we'll probably end up speeding along the first couple minutes of matches in the future if this change goes through. But we still got a whole series. So, and these two always go back and forth. I seriously doubt it's going to be a clean sweep unless ByuN has figured something out and Solar's flailing. Which, we'll see. A very odd setup. Is he going to use a factory to wall? Oh, you don't need a second depot nearly as early as Terran with the way builds work out. I think he's going to wall off with a factory, or he's just leaving space for the reactor. I'm being dumb. Well, seen any good movies lately? How's the new Star Wars? Looks fun. Yeah, the Reaper on its way out. And, well, Solar has gone for the 13 hatch, but the Reaper will be there well before the first queen. He goes straight into the main. That is a level of confidence that you rarely would see before this patch. He did cut just a bit to get the Reaper a little bit quicker. The queen pops out, but putting some pressure on early for sure. The queens, and choosing to go for injects as well. No creep spread early. Just the single Reaper to contest it. Now, wait. He didn't kill an Overlord, did he? No. The Overlord hanging out. There's a pervert pillar much further. A Ghost Academy. It's another Ghost Rush. Hellions, Ghosts. We'll see if he adds on the armory for Hellbats. But, certainly, well, who are you gonna call, Solar? Now, the struggle for Zerg is not so much countering the Ghosts, in my humble and modest opinion. A lot of smart people in the comments say those things. It's not me. I don't know. Shut up, Jimmy. I know. But, so the Overlord is so unbelievably slow without Overlord speed that there is no chance of actually getting it into the main base to scout. If you go for Overlord speed, you spend 100 gas to do so. In which case, as Scarlet has said, I've just spent 100 gas to see what's going to kill me faster because I spent 100 gas getting Overlord speed. So, oh, and another Overlord. Oh, get off! Hey, why are they so slow? We look positively spry. Because everyone who makes the patch is Terran. All right, just statistically. Not like in-game, but just in general. What? That's really meta, Brenda. I'm just saying. So, one Overlord goes down, which partly supply blocks Solar. There's a single Ghost on the way, which a 75 energy for a snipe. You only get one. But of course, well, lines up the shot, and one queen is gone down. Hello and goodbye. And don't forget, it does way more damage in general at more range. So even though the Hellions are pretty weak against the Roaches, the Ghost is doing 20 damage, well, 19 damage a shot. So ByuN walks in, and I believe he may have just won the game. A bunch of Roaches on the way. Solar was going for a 2-base Roach timing with speed. Unfortunately, one Ghost, and a few, of course, the Hellions are kind of important, but lines up another shot, and you may think the Roaches counter the Ghosts, but they were all of them deceived. Because the Ghosts with... So, this is a real... I'm actually talking about this. The Ghost has more range and moves faster than a Roach off of creep. If you don't get Roach speed, which Solar rushed to and did not have it by the end of this game, you cannot touch the Ghosts with Roaches. They can just kite them. And they do 19 damage a hit. We increase the flat damage for some reason, while also increasing their range. On top of the snipe one-shotting. It is, well, 2-0 ByuN, and a curious set of changes, which... Now, yes, they might cost more supply. They might have less HP. But neither of those things matter very much if you can't hit them. Or at least that's my analysis. So, game number 3. And this is starting to look a bit more one-sided than a Mobius Strip. Game 1, Solar clearly had a plan. Now, ByuN is a master of driving towards the end game. Obviously, we saw the early game mostly in the last one, but if the map starts mining out, that's when ByuN hits his power spike again. But you've got the first units coming out. The first timing with, like, Marines and medevacs. And then it drops off a bit. Usually ByuN loses some map control once the Zerg has enough supply to shut everything down. But as the map starts mining out and we start actually getting into the bean counter phase, which has a tendency to happen with the turtley style, then ByuN, he's patient. I ran the numbers before this. Both of these players have played within a few hundred of 15,000 professional games over the last 16 years. Those are just ranked tournament matches. 15,000. And they both won over 60% of them. Which, against ranked... How many people here have even played 15,000 games of StarCraft 2? 1v1. There's a few out there. There are dozens of us. But, to play that many... What am I trying to say? A lot of experience. A lot of veterancy. A lot of patience. Though, it also means that changing things up, like, neither of them have historically been big innovators. I guess you could, besides ByuN getting the Reaper nerfed, not once but twice, by just continuing to abuse it to such an extent, it was almost forced to be nerfed. And is only just really good now instead of obscenely good. Water feature. It's always been there. It's just we have more time to appreciate the scenery. ByuN goes command center first. Now, the Overlord won't get there until... Well, there's a chance the Marine comes out and snipes off the Overlord anyways. But this is, in my opinion, the kind of issue. So the Overlord is... It was nerfed in speed because with less workers, the cost of SCV scouting or probe scouting is greater. Like, it's a greater percentage of your economy. Of course, for ByuN, it's usually about 0% of his economy because he very rarely actually scouts. So, the Overlord will spot the command center, the orbital command. He does know this was a command center first build. So he knows he has a little bit more leeway. A third base is on the way. Zergling speed. And just a Zergling to poke around and, well, we'll see how much info it gets. He spotted the... It is very important to see the factory. Because with ByuN especially, it could easily be 2-3 more wrecks. So, he does see the factory, though it doesn't necessarily have to be Hellions. It is a Hellion. He hasn't actually flipped it over. He's still building reactored Marines, which is something a little bit different. Single Hellion headed across. I don't think this is going to end up being Ghost this time. We've seen 2 Ghost rushes. Just completely coincidentally, ByuN is up 2-0. But looks like he's going to shy away from it for game number 3. We're going to do a medevac Marine with incremented Hellion drop, which we'll call that the Sizzle Drizzle build. It's raining men. And Zerglings are getting char-broiled, if you would. So, we all Sizzle Drizzle. Working title. Meanwhile, the Overlord retreated to a more obscure location, which means he's not going to see the medevac come out, but he also won't be losing the Overlord to the first medevac, or the Marines inside, more accurately. Solar he has nothing but drones and things. He doesn't have an Evo chamber, no Bane Nest, no Lair, no nothing. The drop in the natural will just kind of not do anything. The Hellions will try to dart into the third and will also not do anything. So that... Well, Solar is going to be completely comfortable. The creep spread is slightly stalled. Occasional creep tumors, but he's got the queen defense teams, the creep defense teams on either side. 2 queens are not quite enough, but the threat of Zerglings is keeping ByuN. Another creep tumor will be sniped. The medevac still has plenty of HP. Just the back and forth. And creep... Now, creep tumors still build at the same speed. It's just the creep from them spreads marginally slower. The Liberator is demonstrating how still it technically has an anti-air attack. And gives away its position. So, ByuN with the most laissez-faire here, sort of attack style. He's got all the pieces of something dangerous, but none of them are coming together. Almost loses the Liberator. The medevac's at half HP, the Hellions are half broken, and he's taken his third. But Solar has done perfectly fine on his end of things. He's got a lair on the way, the 1-1 upgrades, but ByuN will have an advantage. Building up with some more. Stim is not too far out, but a Zergling counterattack is well positioned. I don't think the Liberator will discourage too much here, as Zergling's kind of a soft counter, as there are so many targets, the Liberator can only pop them so fast. 4 SCVs dead. Stim and 1-1 about to complete. And the creep spread has been pushed relatively far back to the point that Solar doesn't have any vision of this. He is just building Banelings. He's already got 68 drones. He's adding some more. But with 1-1 and Baneling speed on the way, he's already in a pretty comfortable spot when it comes to defending early on. And the Banelings will knock out a couple depots, and the SCVs working on him because he saw the Liberation Zone was still there. Meanwhile, the Queens holding a few Hellbats mixed in. He got an armory, mostly for the upgrades, but why not? A single Widow Mine will be dealt with. And the Marines are pushed back. He doesn't have Bane speed, but he will... Ooh, that slurp. The load command. Share the load. It's so smooth. Before, players were... When you saw it, the hot pickups, it was several actions. But now... Well, let's see. We go to the ByuN action cam. Building up back at home. Baneling speed is about to complete, most importantly. He knows he's dealing with, oh, mass. Retargets onto the Banes and...
Research complete.
He gets a few. Well, that wasn't exactly what I was looking for. But ByuN prioritizing his Widowmine micro, which you can do. The moment it's targeting, you can switch to any target in range. It's one of those things that's not super obvious, but we do have the targeting line now. Automatically it locks on to the nearest target, but you can reset it. Though it has to reset the lock-on time, which is sometimes a good thing, as we've seen many before. And... oh, but wait, there's more! Slurps up the rest. Marines and mines down the center. No medevacs here to support them, though. Just trying to put together a minefield that we've already seen have great effect. The Hydras are chasing down the medevacs. They found a couple Marines that dropped out a bit too quickly. The Zerglings will drag out the Widow Mines. Unfortunately, well, gonna back up, but wait, there's more. The Minecraft gameplay. I'm expecting 10 million views on this video with this level of Minecraft gameplay. Okay. Maybe I need to put the storyline together. Brenda, where is the creep? You've asked that for the last 73 episodes. Well, it's not my fault this game has been pretty much the same for the last 10 years. What did we say about getting meta? Honestly, I don't remember. See, now that's pretty better. I don't... sorry. The minefield, but he drags a lot of them forward. And Widowmines work both ways. Drags them into the Marines. The Banelings are rolling through. ByuN down 30 supply. And what does he have left? 0 siege tanks, 0 mines. Well, 1 siege tank immediately sent to the units lost tab. The SCVs, he doesn't have the economy, he doesn't have the supply, he doesn't have the units, and he doesn't have the game. Solar just rolling through, and it looks like he'll battle back in game number... well, would you die already? So ByuN did take out a hatchery with the drop to the 12 o'clock, but that's too much, right? You can't recover from that. Right? He's targeting down one after another. Drops a stable of mules. What? Okay, GG. Solar strikes back in a pretty straightforward fashion. ByuN notably 0 ghost rushes and a command center first. It truly felt like Solar embracing the full Zerg. He managed to get so much so quickly. And ByuN just gets run over. A curious choice. Possibly, well, I'm sure these players are doing a bit of limit testing as well. While they'd love to win the tournament, they're already in the top 2, which is the vast majority of the prize pool. Which, you can have your debates about that, but... And we see ByuN trying out the command center first, Solar, with a very macro-oriented build behind it. Did not make any attempt to punish the command center first. No roaches, no early glare, nothing. Just pure drones and relying on queens and lings to defend. Which is not an original idea, but it seems to still be an effective one, is the important point. Extractor trick. To get 13 supply. And he's gonna get a hatch before the Overlord. No. So, using the extractor to lower your supply. When a drone becomes a building, I know there's probably a few new viewers out there, and welcome. And thank you. And now maybe I should make these explanations in game number 1 as opposed to game number 4. But if you've made it this far, well, of course, to everyone, like and subscribe. But also, welcome. Now, for all the drama and excitement about a new patch, and that might be why you're either coming back or joining for the first time, know that even if people are going to get worked up about it, that's because they care. And all I see is people caring very loudly in many different ways. And that's because we all want the best thing for the game. Now, what is the best thing? Now, that's another comment and a question up for debate. thus the caring. But I was explaining Extractor Trick and got a little sidetracked. But Extractor Trick is because when a drone becomes a building, you get one less supply because you no longer have a drone. So you pop into an extractor for a second. You can build another drone with that extra supply, and then you cancel it immediately, giving you 13 out of 12 or whatever the number ends up being. And it's used to pop another drone or unit out quicker without having to build an overlord or before your overlord finishes. It's pretty common, though I don't recommend trying it unless you know what you're up to in early game builds. And a lot of Zergs have been trying different versions of it with the new patch and the worker count, because you get the hatchery provides 12 supply. Well, the overlord provides 8, the hatchery provides 4. Let's be very accurate. Which doesn't give you a lot of room here, as Solar does another extractor trick to get a queen out of the, or another set of Zerglings out, rather, before his overlord comes out. And those sets of Zerglings might be very important, as the Reaper shows up well before the queen finishes. The drone coming down the ramp, and yeah, well, the Reaper, chicanerous and deplorable. I don't run out. I'm just saying. Sorry. Oh. The Overlord wandered a little too far. Wow, how sporting of ByuN. That has to be about the Overlord. So, the Overlord should have died. Why is the Overlord so slow, says Solar. ByuN, it translated as Overlord twice, which is a weird thing to say, but ByuN being very sporting here, that kind of confirms the idea that even though they're competitive, they also want to actually see how the game has changed. And he lets the Overlord live, because on this map with the Pervert Pillar here, where the Overlord is safe from early Marines because you don't have high ground vision, Solar should have had it there. That was just a elementary mistake, my dear Watson. And ByuN actually lets him keep it alive, because otherwise we're not going to get a very good gauge of the state of the game. Losing that first Overlord is absolutely, utterly devastating. Not just because of the lack of scouting, but because it's a significant percentage of your supply. Now, no Ghost, but instead another Cloak unit. The Banshee is on the way. As you know, I'm a Banshee Evangelist. A Banshee Evangelist, if you would. Though, with the changes to the Ghost, I might not be as committed to that idea. I still think the Banshee's amazing. Like, the ability to force such a strong response and have defense. There's a reason why Protoss goes Oracle in every single Protoss versus Zerg. Okay, like, and the same principles apply to Terran versus Zerg. I don't see why they wouldn't. You want to have a unit that can defend you against infinite amounts of ground. And yes, it might not kill roaches that quickly, or Zerglings, but it does kill them, and they can't fight back. On top of the fact it forces your opponent to have anti-air. You have to build spores. You have to have queens in position. You can't, one does not simply walk across the map. So, for the first time, actually, I think we're seeing a Banshee. Now, if you go Ghost, they are very costly. You can't go Banshee and Ghost at any sort of early game timing. You kind of have to choose between them, especially if you want to go Cloak for the Banshee, which ByuN already has done. And he's taking us to McDonald's. We're going to get another test. He's going to go mech. Which, trying to think of any other changes. Terran literally had no changes specifically besides the Ghost. And the command center giving slightly less supply, just like all the bases give less to balance out the worker change, so. Now, let me think about Zerg changes. Well, besides the fact the Viper can't abduct siege tanks, even though it should be able to, which is very upsetting, by the way. I am still not over that. I really hope. It's been a week now. Come on. The Spire on the way. Muta's got a functionality buff. They more reliably target units that are threats to them, which means if they're firing on a bunch of Marines and Marauders, the bounces will actually just hit the Marines, which is quite a big buff in those specific scenarios. Also, their arc slop is larger now, which I've had explained to me is how much quicker or like the range or essentially the angle at which attacks can go off. So no longer is it just a straight line on the bouncing attacks, but it can kind of go a little off to the side. If I'm reading that correctly. I haven't seen her use mutas enough to really compare to the live server, but I think we're about to get a pretty good example. There are Cyclones. Hell Clones is the choice, which is good for ByuN in some ways. If he had gone straight for siege tanks, he just loses. Cyclones with Magfield Accelerator absolutely shred mutas. But it's a numbers game. 2 or 3 Cyclones against 8 to 10 mutas. That's not going to work out. And does he have an engineering bay? He does not. Not even started. The mutas are already flapping their way out. ByuN has done minimal damage. He's killed 1 drone, 6, 7 lings. And an Overlord. He eventually got the one on the high ground, but he waited until the appropriate moment. And oh no. It's just a complete and utter disaster for ByuN. All of his Cyclones are on the other side, and he just doesn't just have Marine. He just doesn't have Marines. Cyclones are not rapidly produced. And he's completely out of position. He just loses one of the Banshees. There's obvious select all army panic here for him. The Cyclones will lock on, and he'll be able to knock a few mutas out of the sky with ease. But there's no turrets. He started the engineering bay, but it's far too little. And it's probably too... He's building more mutas, but honestly, the fact that turrets haven't already started, he just flew through the entire base. There's no engineering bay. That's a lot of Hellions, but... And they do have Blue Flame. And +1 weapons. So there are some good things happening for ByuN. He still has 59 SCVs despite the losses. But, the thing is, mutas can fight the Cyclones. Again, a numbers game. He's got 13 mutas against 7 clones. The Zerglings can help fudge the numbers as well, though the Cyclones will prioritize their anti-air attack, which is quite convenient. You know, the Lings and Banes. A huge counter-attack from Solar. He's using the creep as well as he can. Overruns the turret with ease. The SCVs, there's literally no other defense. No Widowmons, no Thors. And without them, like, he's just gonna run through. Mr. Zergachev, tear down this wall. Well, maybe not. 23 SCVs dead. Thing is, Solar can just collapse on the army. Getting home is going to be quite an arduous ordeal, but he managed to evade. He gets all the way home to join up with his reinforcements. He drops the mules at the 3rd, but Solar still has 75 drones to 46 SCVs. Solar has dozens upon dozens of mutas, and by that I mean 15, but he's building 4 more. There's going to be a dozen Cyclones. ByuN has 2-2 on the way from Mac. And this is still one of the most cost-effective army compositions if you can dictate the fight. And that's what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to be able to control the engagements. But right now, it's Solar is putting a ring on it. 6 more mutas on the way. Solar nearly maxed out. He's wrapping around to the north side. And the mutas are swinging in. The Cyclones will try to kite back, but the Lings and Banes are closing the distance. A bunch more Zerglings split off to the north. They may just get into the base. The mutas are shredding a GG. Solar is able to springboard off the critical damage done with the initial mutas and run it all the way past the finish line. And we're all tied up going to game number 5. So ByuN trying out Mech. Solar. Able to put it down easily. That was about the ideal scenario for mutas. That was the best case that I've seen in many moons. But these two giving us our money's worth. You might be like, I didn't give any money. Well, you liked and subscribed, which counts. So, thank you for watching. And thank you for the Stegosaurus, Pigosaurus Cup. Combination of pig and the Stegosaurus organization. Yes. The dinosaur. And also, StarCraft 2 community. But, which, you know, you might say that the StarCraft 2 community is almost exclusively dinosaurs. To which I say, how's the back pain? Back in my day, I installed StarCraft 2 on CD-ROM. And, well... Do your kids know what a CD-ROM drive is? We've asked this question before, but it's still probably the same answer. That's usually how it works, but... So, it's Game 5. I can editorialize. I'm going to get the post-game discussion done during Game 5. Because it does seem like neither player is going to... Command center first. Okay. I think there's a real issue with the patch. And the issue is not the changes itself. The issue is that we have several glaring bugs. I don't know if you might have seen some videos already. The changeling explodes when it's killed for 10 damage, which is, it's supposed to just do damage to changelings. It's not just changelings. You can kill units with it, which is clearly not intentional. The Protoss start with less supply on their Nexus. It's supposed to be 13, it's 12. The Overlord is supposed to be it's supposed to be between this speed and the one it was. But apparently, it's currently the speed it was in Wings of Liberty, without accounting for the fact that we work in real time, as opposed to StarCraft time. Which, back in the day, we used to calculate everything in StarCraft time, which is faster than real time because of a quirk from the Brood War. So when you set the number to the same thing it was in Wings of Liberty, that means the Overlord is slower because a second takes longer, and speed is measured in units per second. So, and now, why is this all relevant? As of this, when you're watching this, and when I'm casting it, nothing has been fixed. These bugs have not been fixed. These are critical game change, like the Overlord being 20% too slow. The Nexus having less supply, Abduct on Vipers not working on siege tanks. You have to take with a massive grain of salt. I already had plenty of salt. You can have some. Like, if this Overlord dies to the Marine, this Overlord should not die. To 2 Marines, maybe, but to the 1 Marine, absolutely not. Every single build is affected by this. I didn't want to say this one, but this is actually the biggest bug. I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to bring it up. You're like, Winter. Anyways, so I made a whole Google Doc, and I'm just going to put it on the screen here because we got a moment. These are the bugs that are currently in the patch and need to be fixed before we can take the game seriously. Microbial Shroud is still researchable, despite not needing research. Vipers cannot abduct siege tanks. Overseer changelings explode. Roaches can infinitely stack with Burrow for some reason. It's a weird one. Overlord is the wrong number. So this is probably the biggest one. The orbital command provides +2 supply the moment you press the button. Because it's not a command center, and that wasn't accounted for. So I feel like that colors this whole series as well. That needs to be fixed yesterday. Literally, the moment you press it, you get +2 supply. So you don't need your second supply depot nearly as early. It is not intentional. It doesn't apply to the Planetary Fortress, and it's not in the patch notes. Ghosts get an extra bonus damage to light. And the Protoss Nexus provides 12 supply instead of 13, like listed in the patch notes. These need to be fixed now. If this patch goes live with any of those, like, those are not debate. Those are just wrong. Like the patch notes are raw, are lying then. So I want to be really excited for the new patch. If you've been watching my streams, of which I've been streaming a lot on this channel, you'll know what I'm saying right now. But I need to say it. I need to make it clear that these are not small things. Every single build order is affected by them. Terrans, it's a buff that they shouldn't have. And it's also screwing over any discussion about the early game against the other races. Because if you just have to, like, it needs to be fixed now. It's been over a week, and we've had no acknowledgement. And I feel like that validates my very extensive concerns about the sort of maintenance level that Blizzard is capable / willing to put in to any sort of big changes to the game. But if we get random patches, okay. Please. Yesterday. Today. Tomorrow at the latest, or I'm going to lose a lot of faith. Because tomorrow's Friday, and if it takes 2 business weeks, well, you know what also takes 2 business weeks? A spore crawler, when a cloaked banshee has already flown into your mineral line, transfuses a drone. What a save! He gets in. And the banshee just kind of hanging out. Another banshee comes in, though. The drones! Solar! Solar not mining with many of his drones. No, he was running from the banshee before. He's got a spire on the way. And 58 drones. Meanwhile, ByuN back at home. Remember, command center first, so this was all pretty severely delayed. Though Solar also very macro-oriented. A lot of macro-roning, very little cheese. That list of bugs is also in image form on my Discord if you would like to use it in certain balance arguments or post it in places that might be relevant. I believe Pig also has a list of things that... Anyways. None of them going to affect this stage of the game, though. As the Banshee's in the main, the Queens will come back to defend. The Spire is nearly completed, but the Mutilus Den won't save you from the Marines at the front. The Overlord's not quite in position to spot this. He spots the Queens moving out of position, which gives a little bit of leeway to move forward. There are Lings and Banes, but Baneling speed is still a long way off. Gonna back up. And without Bane speed, those Banelings don't have their extra HP. And obviously they don't have their extra speed, which is gonna make it much more difficult. 5 Mutas on the way. The Marines just show up. They're stimming, they're winning, they're tearing through everything on the front line. The Queens are coming down. The target fire isn't quite there, but he slurps the Marines with the Metavax. And gets away at the last moment. The hatchery critically low, and there is no 4th base. As ByuN has his 3rd command center finishing up, so Solar doesn't have a decisive advantage economically. The first Muta is knocked out of the sky. The Mutas themselves revealed. That last Baneling buys enough time, and the Mutas will chase down the Metavax, but the reinforcements are on the way across. And Solar tried to go Mutas, but this time... A bunch of men with drugs, guns, and an anger at what they're calling illegal aliens is a tried and true lore-accurate Terran method. So, the Mutas are back. The best defense against Mutas is almost always a good offense. Target fire on the Banes. There are only 2 more left over. That is target practice for ByuN. And, well, he's that last Baneling just eats it. But the Marines stand their ground, and ByuN guns Solar down. I feel like there was a bit of limit testing with the mech build. He just legitimately got destroyed in the game on Old Republic. But ByuN will take the first tournament with a few asterisks, 3-2. So... We need to fix these. As fun as this was, I feel like it's heavily colored by the Vipers not abducting tanks, by orbital commands just giving free supply, and also the Ghost is I know we're talking about that. Terran got changes to 1 unit, or at least listed changes to 1 unit, and it's the Ghost. I'm sure we've never discussed Ghost before, but does it need to do that much more damage and be uninterruptible? Well, up for debate. But thank you for watching. I want more people to care, and I want them to do it at a reasonable yet commanding volume, just like I try to. When I ask you if you got the means of motivation, check out Patreon, YouTube membership, but I hear liking and subscribing is still free, at least for now. So let's hope we can get those fixes in, and it doesn't feel like a fix is in instead. But thank you to our meal tier patrons, Big Jiggy, Devendor, Kate, Crazy Mouse, Mario, Suit. Glad you still enjoy. Make sure to check out this video. Jimmy picked it out just for you, and I hope I made your day a little bit better. I hope to see you next time. Good luck, have fun. Thank you for watching. Stay chill.